Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Neuro, and it is time to look over the patch notes for the proposed patch that may or may not be coming out in the future. I'm going to go through this painstakingly from top to bottom and let you know my thoughts, because anytime there's a patch, people want to know, hey Neuro, is this good for the Zerg Cabal? We're going to see. These are the patch goals here. They're starting off with setting an intention. I respect that. The goals. Make Protoss more stable on a professional level in the early game versus Raven pushes, and more able to fight Terran mid-late game armies without solely relying on disruptors. So they're saying Protoss needs help against Terran. Increase the variety of the mid-game and late-game army compositions by reducing the strength of masked ghosts, banelings, and disruptors. Cool idea. As someone who loses many games against Masked Turtle Ghost, this pleases me greatly. Make over-specialized units, Cyclones, Mothership, and Infestors viable through more stages of the game. Cool. Cyclones are really weird. Personally, I find it to be the most annoying style that Terran can go for. Going for Mass Cyclone, lock onto your stuff, and then drive away. We'll see what they have to change about the Cyclone there. Infestors have felt pretty bad for a long time, so we'll see what happens with those. They want to bring more visual clarity to important units on the mini-map, as well as relevant abilities like Widowmine targeting and Disruptor's cooldown indicators, so making the game more visually accessible. Cheers. They also want to promote more interaction in late-game scenarios by making units such as Tempest, Mothership, and Broodlord more maneuverable. Broodlords are notoriously very bad at the moment. Alright, what are the changes to Terran? Hupsaya, I'm making a video, sorry. Alright. This Terran changes, let's see. The Cyclone. Cost has been reduced from 150-100 to 125-50, so it's cheaper. Interesting. That seems like a buff. Tech lab requirement removed. That also seems like a buff. Health reduced from 120 to 100. Alright, that's a nerf. Armor reduced from 1 to 0. Also a nerf. Supply cost reduced from 3 to 2. That's a buff. Auto attack range increased from 5 to 6. That's a buff. Auto attack damage and attack speed is now 11. Plus 2 versus armored at a 0.491 cooldown. Okay. I didn't say what it was before. Lock-on now uses Cyclone auto attack damage. +1 damage per weapon upgrade no longer ignores armor. Oh. Lock-on no longer has a delay before the first shot and maintains weapon cooldown between lock-ons. Okay. Lock-on cooldown removed. The cast range reduced from 7 to 6. That's a nerf. Max range reduced from 15 to 9. Wow, that means you might actually be able to escape a lock-on, instead of them being able to lock on and kill your unit from 8 screens away. Praise God. Multiple Cyclones will now auto-cast lock-on onto the same target. This is an awesome, massive nerf to Cyclones. Praise David Kim, or whoever's idea this was. Probably someone in the Zerg Cabal. One of the reasons why Cyclones have been so strong and easy to use against Zerg is because you can just drive next to the Zerg army and then drive away, and the Cyclone micro just kind of takes care of itself. In the current patch, this is before this set of notes, the Cyclones, if there's already a lock-on, they will lock on to a different target. So it's like auto micro of that ability onto different units, which is very strong. So for them to remove that basically means that the Cyclones could lock onto a unit and get overkill damage instead of distributing the damage really evenly. So this is a pretty big nerf to the Cyclone. Mag field accelerator upgrade removed. Okay. Move speed reduced from 4.73 to 3.6. That's a pretty big nerf. That's going to make them a lot easier to surround. That's one of the reasons why they're so frustrating to play against, is because they're very fast. They drive in division of your army, scan you, kill half your army, and drive away. So that's pretty cool. New upgrade, increasing move speed to 5.1. Okay, I take back what I just said. Now they're even faster than before. Redesigning the Cyclone to make it into a more all-around unit in all matchups aims to increase the viability of mech-based gameplay against Protoss while promoting more active engagements with mech-based armies. Sure. They didn't really reference Cyclone versus Zerg. I don't know how often pro-Terrans go for Cyclone versus Zerg, but that may be a thing. They need a name for the Cyclone upgrade. I nominate Super Zoomy Mode Happy Time as the upgrade title. And if it goes in, you can say that I thought of that. All right, the Ghost. Here we go. Snipe damage reduced from 170 to 130, plus 40 versus Psionic. That is amazing. Wow. Super, super amazing. Awesome. EMP radius reduced from 1.75 to 1.5. Cool. Let's see their thought here. They have an idea. Light bulb. Reducing the radius of EMP will encourage Protoss to use Psystorm in PvT and help in straight-up engagements versus Terran. Snipe will no longer one-shot units such as Zealots and Roaches, as well as requiring an extra shot to kill Ultras in the late game versus Zerg, reducing their cost efficiency over time, while still being able to kill important spellcasters such as Vipers. Great. So the reason this is so good, my favorite change so far, is because in the late game, what happens in Terran versus Zerg is Terran masses defensive buildings and ghosts and refuses to move out until the map is mined out. And it's a way to win, but it's a very gross way to win. And it really relies on that cost efficiency of the ghost snipe, where instead of them beating you with money, like the units that cost money, they're beating you with the ghost energy bar. And by getting more ghosts on the map, they're getting another pool of resource in ghost energy. And the ghost counters ultras, broodlords, lurkers, infestors, vipers, roaches, ravagers, hydras, queens, swarm hosts, basically everything except for banelings and lings. Ghost counter. It's an incredible god unit against Zerg. So for this to be nerfed is fantastic. Widowmine Drilling Claws now also makes the Widowmine unburrow twice as fast. Okay. Targeting line is now more visible. This is returning some of the strength to active Widowmine Micro in the mid-game versus Zerg that was lost after the Drilling Claws burrow speed nerf, while not significantly increasing the power of Widowmine drops. Okay. That's fine. Maybe we'll see more Biomine. Lately it's been mostly Biotank. Trisha, thank you for the raid. Welcome. We're going through the patch notes here. We're at the Terran stage here, so we haven't gotten to Protoss yet. So we saw the Widowmine change. The targeting line is now more visible. Not sure if everyone knows this, but before Widowmine fires, there is a thin line that points to the unit that it's going to hit. And you can do things to micro against that. For Zerg, if we have a drone that's targeted, we can make a spore while the mine shot is in the air, and it doesn't actually deal damage. So this will make it also more viable for people to micro against the Widowmine. Medivac speed upgrade replaced with Claudius Reactor increases energy regen rate by 100%. Cost is 100, about a minute. Minimap radius increased from 7.5 to 1. This is a really cool change in that it's going to help people to catch drops that are happening because the Medivacs are going to be larger squares on your little minimap in the bottom left. So that's cool. I didn't even think to change that, but apparently someone complained. I think it's a good change. Replaces the current unused Medivac upgrade with an upgrade that can be used in active games with a large Medivac count that run out of energy. Cool. I don't even know if anyone gets the speed upgrade for Medivacs. It's kind of a thing with Zerg that we don't really care too much about. Maybe they go fast, maybe they go slower, but the problem remains the same. Standardized minimap size of the Warp Prism Medivac and Overlord. Previously, Medivacs could appear smaller on the minimap on large maps. Interesting, that sounds a little bit like a bug. Oops. Okay. The Raven. Interference Matrix now requires an upgrade. This is one of those things that's a TVP nerf to Terran. This doesn't really affect Zerg. We almost never see a Raven against Zerg, mainly because Interference Matrix disables a mechanical unit, and we don't have those. Even if you equip the what's it called? Like the Mecha Zerg skins, your units are still all biological. They need to leave my mothership alone, says Trisha. Trisha likes the mothership big and invisible. I hear that. Heard. I will pass that along to my brothers and sisters in the Zerg Cabal, who clearly control all of these patches. Winky face. Zerg Changes. The Lurker. Adaptive Talons move speed bonus removed. I'll be honest, I didn't even know that we got Lurker move speed with that. But now I know that, but I also know that it's going away. So I'll have a similar experience probably. Adaptive Talons cost reduced from 150 to 100. So basically this was a way to burrow into the ground faster and unburrow faster. So yep, they're still gonna unburrow and burrow at the same rate, but they won't run around as fast, which is fine. Some of the main counters to the Lurker getting nerfed reduce the speed of repositioning Lurkers in the late game. Makes sense. The Infestor. Pathogen glands upgrade removed. Infestor starting energy increased from 50 to 75. Fungal growth cast range reduced from 10 to 9. Fungal growth damage reduced from 30 to 20. So basically, the Infestors can now just fungal as soon as they're made, instead of a unit emerging from your base that can't actually do anything. That's a pretty cool idea. Since the Infested Terran ability was removed, the Infestors have been one of the most dumpster garbage units ever. Okay, that's not what it says. The Infestor has no utility until reaching 75 energy. True. Fungal damage and cast range are reduced to prevent Infestors from killing Marines with 2 consecutive fungals, as a trade-off to the EMP radius nerf in TVZ late game. Cool. A bit of an Infestor rework. Probably a buff. It still doesn't seem like an exciting and good unit to make, but you can fungal when the Infestor is born. That's cool. Spire air armor upgrade reduced from 150 to 150. So from these 3 amounts to these amounts. That's pretty big. Air armor is considered less useful than air weapons despite being more expensive. I didn't know that. The Viper. Consume damage reduced from 250 to 150. That's good. You won't be killing your base as much as you were before. That's one of the things that's kind of tricky with the Viper is when you go to consume a bunch of stuff and you make a bunch of Vipers and you kill your own base, it feels kind of bad. So this just makes getting Viper energy a bit easier. The Broodlord move speed increase from 2.24 to 2.62. That's a good bit faster. They just keep buffing the speed of this unit to try to get people to make it. Broodling move speed reduced from 5.37 to 4.13. This is fine, I feel like. Because you don't really care about the Broodling's success that much. You just want to keep your Broodlords alive and keep them throwing out Broodlings. Broodling health reduced, attack speed reduced. So this makes it easier for opponents to clean it up. And it also means that they're doing less DPS. So the Broodlord itself is less damage and less of a threat, but it's also more difficult to kill. So they should be easier to maintain as a consistent problem for the opponent in the late game, hopefully. Further increasing Broodlord mobility, reducing the strength of Broodlings to compensate for more active play. Make this not affect Broodlings from building deaths. Cool. Overlord. Deceleration speed increase from 1.49 to 2.28. Generate creep delay reduced from 1.43 to 1.07. So they want to see more queen drops. Queen drop pushes. Could be a bit better. It's going to make the overlords more maneuverable. Also means that you can fly an overlord to an opponent's space location and potentially block it a little bit sooner. Could be good. Transport upgraded. So this is the drop overlord mutation. Move speed increased from 0.9 to 1.099. So they'll be a little bit faster than your regular overlords. And then with overlord speed, it's increased from 2.62 to 2.83. So they're going to go fast. And this will make them behave a little bit different from regular overlords, just by being faster in both modes. Yeah, regular overlords are the same. Allow for more active Zerg drop use in combination with the Baneling damage nerf. Should not increase the overall strength of Baneling harass against Protoss. Ultralisk. Now they're cheaper by 25 minerals. It's not a huge change, but a little bit cheaper. Burrow-unburrow time reduced from 1.43 to 0.89. Ultralisk do have an extremely slow burrow time. This is now just going from extremely slow to very slow. Lurkers and Brood are favored over Ultras in the late game. Ultras have a poor cost efficiency over time. Should make them more used throughout long games while not greatly reducing the initial investment. Pretty cool. Hydralisk. Speed plus range upgrades. The cost is 150, 150, 71. They're putting this back into the game. So currently the price is 100, 100 for both. And you have to get 2 upgrades. So that's 50, 50 less in terms of resources. And then it should be less in terms of time as well. They did put a note here that they're going to keep an eye on Hydra-based timings versus Protoss. This will make timing stronger against Protoss, where you can just get a Hydra upgrade, spam some lings, and just go for an attack. That was one of the all-ins that Zerg did against Protoss a lot, which is why they split the upgrades. So, yeah, I think some of its Protoss players have gotten better at dealing with Hydras, and there are a lot more Charge Lot Archon plays in the meta, and also Adept all-ins in the meta, and also Mass Oracle early on can put pressure on early Hydras, so yeah, I guess this is like trying to get people to make Hydras against Protoss somewhat. Baneling, bonus damage per upgrade reduced from 2 plus 2 versus light to 2 versus all, so less damage. The Bane speed upgrade cost is reduced by 50-50. The Bane speed research time is reduced by 8 seconds, and then the health bonus from Bane's from the upgrade is removed. So the upgrade is cheaper. It takes less time, but you don't get the bonus health. This is kind of a mixed bag because the Baneling has been a really fun and strong unit to make, and it will still be strong. It's mainly just the top end damage of it is not going to be quite as good. And then, in a sense, you do get a bit of a buff with this Bane speed change in defending 2 base all-ins. Like Marine tank all-ins or Hellbat all-ins and stuff, you have a better chance of getting some speed Banes in time to hold it. So that's pretty good. It's got some upsides and some downsides. Banes will no longer one-shot probes or drones with +2 attack. I almost never hit +2 Banes against Zerg, but against Protoss I do that a lot. But Bane run by is still going to be good. Speed upgrade requires less of an investment to maintain a similar balance for 2 base Terran Marine tank based all-in. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So 2 base timings are going to be easier to hold for Zerg with speed Banes. Protoss, the Forge. The shield upgrade cost has been reduced, so you can upgrade your shield stuff for cheap. It's great that they really lowered the prices of all these upgrades. They're saying shield upgrades are less useful than attack and armor for both air and ground in different scenarios. Current change helps increasing cost efficiency ratio for the shield upgrades. Cool. Cybercore. Air armor upgrade costs reduced. Yeah, so kind of in the same vein as Zerg. Their air upgrades are cheaper now. Air armor is considered less useful despite being more expensive, so they're just nerfing the cost of that, which is a buff. So we've got so far 2 buffs to Protoss Air. Minimap radius increased from 0.875 to 1, so the warp prism will be easier to see on your minimap. The disruptor supply cost increased, model scale reduced by 9%. I don't know why they would change the model scale. Radius increased from 0.5 to 0.625. I'm guessing that's the Nova radius. Doesn't say. So it does hit a larger area, but they're going to be taking up more of the Protoss' supply. It's hard to tell which disruptors have Nova available and multiple are clumped together as the models intersect. All right, so they're trying to make sure it's easier to see which disruptor has been shooting their Nova out. When are they implementing the patch? These are all proposed changes. As a reminder, these changes are not final. They could go with none of them. They could go with all of them. They could go with half of them, or they could go with 69% of them. We don't know what's going to happen. They're going to test this. It's for a test map. Supply cost increases to reduce the potential of mass disruptor army while still allowing Protoss to use disruptor as a strong mid and late game tool. So disruptor against Zerg is, in the current meta, basically never seen. And the reason for that is a lot of styles are Ling based. So any melee based style is going to be a hard counter to disruptors because Lings with speed go faster than the Nova. So this change seems specifically focused on Protoss versus Terran. Void Ray. Prismatic alignment move speed with flux veins increased from 2.62 to 3.49. So that's when they use their activatable ability. It did make them quite slow, but it'll make them a bit faster. Yeah, it just makes them more maneuverable in the late game whenever they use their thing. Tempest acceleration, deceleration increase from 2.1 to 4.2. Radius model scale reduced by 10%, so they will be smaller and faster. Improve the feeling of actively microing Tempest as a slow acceleration makes them feel slow to respond when not already moving. So this is a buff. Being smaller is generally advantageous too. Being a larger unit means it's harder to concentrate your strength and also you're easier to target. Mothership costs reduced from 400 to 250. That's a lot cheaper. That's 150 minerals, 150 gas cheaper, which basically means you can make it earlier in the game. It costs less than a carrier, right? Carrier's like 350, 250. It's actually pretty cheap. Supply costs reduced from 8 to 6, so it doesn't take a full pylon of supply anymore. Build time reduced from 114 to 79. Speed increase from 2.62 to 2.83. Lateral acceleration increase from 1.925 to 32.2875. So I think that has to do with how it kind of slowly slides one direction to another. It should make it a little bit more snappy with how it moves around. It won't lag behind units of a similar speed anymore. Man, how many changes can you get on this unit? Health shields reduced from 350 to 250. So it's less tanky. Radius model scale reduced by 20%. This is a buff. Maybe not an aesthetic buff to make things smaller, but it does make it harder for people to target. No longer has energy. Recall now has a 110-second cooldown. Recall radius reduced from 6.5 to 5. I feel like the change of it not having energy doesn't really affect much. It wasn't really a unit that you would be able to make a bunch of and then use its energy as a resource, so I feel like it's neither here nor there to take the energy out. Battlecruiser used to be an energy unit as well. Time Warp now is a 60-second cooldown. The slow is reduced from 50% to 33%. Time Warp radius reduced from 4 to 3.5, so it's a smaller bubble and it doesn't slow people down as much. Time Warp cast delay reduced from 1.79 to 0.71. So the time it takes for the bubble to affect stuff is less, which is a buff. So it's got a couple nerfs and a buff on that ability. Cloak Field is no longer passive. It's now an activated ability which lasts for 10 seconds with a 50-second cooldown. So this is a nerf for sure. Based on the other changes to the unit, which were buffs, like less cost, less supply, less build time, speed increase. All of these are buffs. And then nerf, buff. I guess this is like a side grade to take the energy out. The Cloaking Field no longer being passive seems like it could be okay. It's just like the question mark of when do you use it during a fight? Because if they have detection, it doesn't matter anyway. Yeah, it'll be weird to push more buttons on your mothership now. Reduce the investment and increase the maneuverability of the mothership. Prevent it from being hard countered by EMP. Should allow for earlier mothership builds in all matchups as well as more active use of the mothership. Yeah, that's one of the things that I don't really know too much about because I don't play Protoss versus Terran much. But an EMP from a ghost removes all the energy of a unit. Sorry, all the shields of a unit. So they could basically do 350 damage to a mothership, but now it'll be 250. So that's a buff against Terran for it to have less shields to get EMP'd. Guardian shield duration increased from 10.7 to 12.86. Precast before engaging Terran armies involving ghosts. Okay. Oracle stasis ward sight range increased from 4 to 7. Allows them to be used more for vision with Stargate-based openings. Okay, fine. Barrier will now also block the first instance of damage which triggers the barrier, and it counts toward the 100 damage blocked by the barrier. Currently, EMP hitting an immortal will drain all the immortal shields as well as activating the barrier, which expires before the immortal ends up receiving other damage. Oh. So, mainly this patch is about buffing Protoss against Terran. Cool. So yeah, they did change some Zerg stuff, a little buff to the Ultra. I don't know when you would burrow and unburrow Ultras. Just doesn't seem like situations for that happen. But it's possible. Cost reduced. So we got an Ultra buff. We got an Overlord drop buff. Broodlord buff and nerf. Small Viper buff. Spire armor buff. Slight Infestor buff, maybe. And then a Lurker side grade. Pretty cool. Terran definitely got the most direct nerfs to it. And it seems like the matchup that they're really focusing on adjusting is PvT. But yeah, I like the nature of these changes. Jokes aside, it seems pretty reasonable. Nothing's that crazy in terms of changes, but they are fitting with the similar theme of make things easier to see and give players opportunity for counterplay. So one of the changes that I'm really happy about, I guess the two main ones are the Cyclone and Ghost reworks. Those are two of the most frustrating units to deal with, mainly because Cyclones could just drive away and they could still finish the kill with this lock on at 15 range, which is insane. So that range being 9 means that you have a much higher chance of breaking that tether if the Cyclones are driving away and you're pulling back at the same time. So really happy about this. We'll also see how the Cyclone feels after, because this could be really strong and potentially overpowered just because they're cheaper now, and you can make 2 of them at a time because it doesn't require a tech lab anymore. So you could make 2 from each factory like you make Hellions. So we'll have to see how this pans out. Could be good, could be bad, but they will be easier to kill. So I'm not sure how good of a unit this is. And then this Ghost change is fantastic. Ultras will be less crap. So this is actually another Ultra buff, you could say. Ultra is being buffed indirectly by the Ghost being nerfed. So it'll take 3 snipes instead of 2. Yeah. Maybe it's going to be time for Ultra drops with Burrow. That could be it. But this is a breakdown of the patch so far. Again, these changes are not final. These are patch goals with the rough draft, and it's going to be on the test map. You can play the test map and give your thoughts, raging on Reddit or the Balanced Design forums, whatever. But this is a community-made patch. The Blizzard StarCraft team doesn't really exist anymore, but there is apparently someone who talks with this community of pro gamers who help balance stuff, and then they greenlight things and push them in. So there's no date for when this is actually going to go live, but this is the current set of changes. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This has been my take of the patch notes. Thank you, God, for nerfing the Ghost. Amen.